Amen. You can have a seat. So good to see all of you this morning, and what a sweet time of worship together. Thank you so much for being here and being a part. This is a special season in the life of our church. Someone even made me a jersey to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of our church. Isn't that cool? And so I had to wear it today and appreciate the guys who did that. But we're going to be taking the next week or two here to just celebrate as a church, but we'll be back into a regular series soon. In fact, in just like 2 weeks, we're going to be starting a brand new series in the Gospel of Mark, and one of my favorite gospel accounts, and I love to be digging into the life and ministry and teaching of Jesus. And so I hope that you'll make it a priority to be with us and join us for that. But as we said, we want to celebrate a little bit, and this Friday and next Sunday we'll be looking ahead. What is the vision God has for us in the future? But today I want to take some time to look back. I want to look back a little bit, and I want to start and set the stage a little bit with this story that Pastor Woody read from Joshua chapter 4. Now, as a little background to the story, this is a story about God's people in the Old Testament, the nation of Israel. And some of you may not know that the Israelites for over 400 years were in bondage and slavery in the land of Egypt. And they were in harsh conditions, being forced to do manual labor. It was a very devastating and difficult time. And they began to grow weary and tired of being in this oppression. And so they cried out to God, and God answered their prayer and sent Moses to be the deliverer who would lead his people out of suffering and bondage. And so Moses came, and God used Moses, right, to work some mighty miracles. In fact, God humbled the greatest nation on the earth at that time, Egypt, and he used 10 signs or miracles, these plagues that God brought, where he directly attacked the nations, the pagan gods that these nations worshiped, and undermined them, and totally dismantled the greatest nation in the world. And in fact, when Israel was leaving, as they were set free from their bondage and slavery, they actually plundered the Egyptians. The Egyptians were so glad to get them out that they said, here, take all of our gold, take all of our silver, take everything that's valuable, just leave and go away from us. And so God, not only did he set his people free, but he promised that he was going to lead them to a new home, a new place. He called it the Promised Land, a place that would be flowing with milk and honey, a place of blessing and prosperity. God wanted to do a great work in his people. So you might remember the story that they get out in the wilderness. They're wandering around for about 40 years, and they finally get to the Promised Land. They're ready to go in to the Promised Land to receive all the blessing that God wants to give to them. And there's one final barrier before they make that step into the Promised Land, and that is crossing the Jordan River. Now, I know some of you have been to Israel and you've seen this, but the Jordan River is not just a small little stream. It's a giant river. And when they came to this place, God actually works a miracle, right? God commands the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant on poles on their shoulders. He says, I want you to walk out into the middle of the water. And so when they do that and step into the water by obedience, God actually stops the water from flowing so that the Jordan River dries up, and all the people of God, most historians estimate it's about 1 million people at that point, they're crossing the river Jordan on dry ground, walking right through it on their way to the Promised Land. Now, when all this is happening, God makes a strange request of his people. I want you to see it. Look with me again at Joshua chapter 4, starting in verse 1, because it says, when all the nation finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, take 12 men from the people. Now, the number 12 is important because there were 12 tribes of Israel. And so God says, I want you to take one representative from each of the 12 tribes. So verse 3, command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight." Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, one man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, "Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you." So God tells the people, you're crossing this Jordan River, you're stepping into the promised land that I've been waiting to give to you, and he makes this strange request, like pick up a rock, have 12 guys do this, just pick up a rock and pile them up over there. Now, I can just envision this moment a little bit, and I'm a guy and I'm competitive and whatnot, but I can just imagine the first guy picks up a rock, and he's like, I don't know how far I'm gonna have to carry this thing, so he gets a smaller one, because it's like, I'm not gonna have this burden, and he carries it out, but the second guy's like, oh, well, I can beat that. I mean, I can do a bigger one. And by the time you get to 9 and 10 and 11, these guys are probably getting these biggest rock that they can carry to take it out. And why would God tell them to pile up a pile of rocks? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But look with me again at the text in verse 6. It says, "When your children ask in time to come, 'What do these stones mean to you?' then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, so these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever." So I want you to notice that God is referring to the next generation. He says someday you're going to have kids, and your kids are going to see this pile of rocks over here. And I want you to build this like this memorial, right? It's like a statue or something that you're going to remember. People are going to look at that, and one day your kids, they're going to look at that, and they're going to be like, "Hey, Mom and Dad, like, why did you pile up these rocks over here? What's the point of that?" And you're going to tell them about the amazing miracle that God did when he dried up the waters of the Jordan River so that all of God's people could walk through and take possession of the land. You see, God was very concerned that the people not forget, that the next generation hear about all that God has done. This was to be a permanent memorial, a reminder of God's faithfulness. If you skip to the end of the chapter in verse 20, we have a little bit more explanation about this. It says, "Those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set them up at Gilgal." So today, if you pull up a map of Israel, you can actually see the place where they crossed over, and the very first little town or city that you come to is a place called Gilgal, and that it's still there. It's where they piled up the rocks. And verse 21, he said to the people of Israel, again, "When your children ask their fathers in time to come," here's the next generation, "Mom and Dad, what do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know, Israel passed over the Jordan on dry ground, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever." So notice there's another reference to the next generation, and God says, they're going to ask you, and I want you to tell them, because I want every generation after yours to never forget the mighty works that God's done. I want them to see how amazing God is, how big God is, all the amazing works that he has done. I want them to know. And so these stones would be a permanent reminder of God's faithfulness. So what about us? What does this have to do with Mission Church or with any of us here today? The reality is you and I were not the children of Israel, and we're not crossing into the promised land that God has promised to give us. But we are the New Testament covenant people of God, the church. We are the called out ones that God has chosen and given his name and sent out into the world to accomplish his purposes. And we do have the promise of Jesus Christ. When Jesus said in Matthew 16, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So we had the promise of God as the people of God, and we're not stepping into a promised land, but here's what we are doing right now. We have an opportunity to mark this moment, right? 10 years of history that God has been faithful. And we have this opportunity to say, God has been faithful, and we don't want to forget about that. We don't want to miss the opportunity to reflect back on the goodness of God. And so today, if it's okay with you, I want to pile up some rocks, right? Like, I didn't bring real rocks in here, but I want us to take some time to reflect on God's goodness. I want us to mark this moment in our history and set up a memorial to God's faithfulness to us. Because, you see, I think there's two reasons why it's important to look back at the past. The first one is that we are a forgetful people. I don't know about you, but it's so easy for me to forget God's goodness in the past. Like, I mean, I can literally be going on in life and something bad happens. Like, I have a bad day, or my car breaks down, or there's just a moment of conflict with someone, or there's a situation at work, or whatever it is. My kids get sick, whatever happens, something happens in my life, and suddenly life is not the way I think it should be. And it's so easy for me to forget that just yesterday God was good. And just the day before that, God was faithful. And the year before that, and the year before that. And God has over and over and over provided for me and taken care of me and done all these things. And he's been faithful to me. And I'm a forgetful person. I can forget the goodness of God. This is why I think journaling is so powerful, right? Because you have a written record of God's goodness in your life. Like, you can look back on that and you can say, I remember God's goodness, because I don't know about you, but I am prone. I am a forgetful person when it comes to the goodness of God. But here's the second thing. God's faithfulness in the past gives us confidence for the future. So when I look back at the past and I think of all the ways that God's been faithful, all the times he's been good, all the ways he's provided, then when I look ahead and think about the future, I have boldness and confidence to step into that, because I know that God has been faithful always in the past. Why would he not be faithful tomorrow too? It tells me about the character and nature of God, that he is faithful and good, and he's going to carry that forward into the future. So at Mission Church, our first 10 years, if you've been around for the ride, you know it's been a roller coaster ride. You know it's been up and down with a lot of highs and a lot of lows. Anytime you're planning a church, it's difficult. As Pastor Woody said, a lot of new churches don't last. And unfortunately, in my 10 years of planting, I have seen many churches come and go. And yet God has been good and faithful. And I think about it when you plant a little plant in your yard, you know, like when you first plant it, it's so tender and it needs all this help. It needs nutrients and water and sunlight, and it needs the right temperature, and it needs all these factors to help it to grow and to flourish. And for us, for 10 years, we've been trying to plant and figure out how to survive and thrive, you know, but I think we're in a season now where God is saying, I've been faithful to you for 10 years, and now that you're getting established, I want you to build something for the future. And so I think that today I want to talk about miracles. Because did you know that God is a God of miracles? Amen. You know, we forget sometimes that the same God who wrote this book, who worked all those mighty miracles, he's still at work today doing miracles. And I want to tell you, I'm not just saying that because I heard about it. I'm saying because I lived it. Because I want you to know right now this morning that Mission Church, it's a living, breathing miracle. Like, we should not be here today. The only reason we are here today, it's not about me, it's not about any of our pastors or anybody on this stage. It's not, the only reason we're here today is because of the divine providence of God. Like, that's it. That's the only reason. Because God has worked miracles on our behalf. A miracle is when God shows up and does something that only God can do. And God's done that in our church over and over and over again. And so today I want to look back and reflect, and I want to share a message called When God Shows Up, because that's a miracle. When God shows up, and God has showed up in our history over and over and over again. You see, before Mission Church ever had a pastor, before we ever had a name for our church, before we ever had a church website or anything else, there was a vision, a dream to have a church plant. Because you see, there was a group of people who understood something. They understood that the West Valley was a growing community. Some of you may not know this, but when you look at statistics for America, two of the fastest growing cities in the country over the last several years running have been in Goodyear and Buckeye. The West Valley is growing faster than just about any community in the country. People are coming here from all over the place. And the reality is there's not enough churches to support that growth. And there's not enough ministries to minister to all of those people. And the reality is the research that we've done, 85% of the people in the West Valley are unchurched. They don't know Jesus. And there's a need to have new churches. And you know, this all started because there was a pastor and a group of elders at Desert Springs Community Church, and they had a vision. They said, you know what, we know this church, we know this community is growing like crazy. And we're not just content, you know, to have our church here. We want to actually send people out and plant a church. Not far away, but actually right here in our own backyard, because we think we need more churches right here in our own backyard. Can I tell you how rare that is? Do you know that most pastors do not want to plant a church right in their own backyard and send their own people out to do that and their own resources because they're worried about building their church and their kingdom? But Desert Springs Community Church said, no, we have a vision to reach the West Valley for Jesus, and it's going to take more churches. And so they took a risk on us. They invested in us. They invested time. They invested money. They prayed for us. They sent volunteers to help us. They supported us financially. They sent members from their own church to help us launch Mission Church. The reality is there's no way we could have done this on our own. There's no way. And so before we even planted Mission Church, God showed up and worked a miracle through another church, through Desert Springs. And they've been a part of our journey from day one. And they're the first big rock, you know, that we want to celebrate, is the fact that Desert Springs had a vision to say we want to launch a church and plant a church. And then 10 years ago, on January the 10th, 2016, we had our very first service at Mission Church. I put a picture here on the screen of some of our core team that met the Sunday right before that. We did a practice, setting all our equipment and gear up at Copper Trails Elementary School. And God was raising up a team that would help, you know, to build this church. And then 1 week later, we had our very first service at Copper Trails Elementary School. Some of you were there, and you remember that moment when we celebrated our very first service. We had 4 years in Copper Trails, 4 years of growth, 4 years of life change, baptisms, involvement in the community. God was moving and working. We had so much momentum. In fact, when we came to the front of 2020, I mean, we were talking to builders and developers about building a permanent home for Mission Church. We were growing so fast and expecting big things from God. We had moved to 2 worship services. We just knew that God had this amazing plan and future. None of us could have known what was going to happen in March of 2020, right? That's when COVID happened. And COVID was hard for all the churches. Every church struggled. Every pastor was trying to navigate that season. But Mission Church struggled really hard. We had some unique challenges because we didn't have a building. We didn't have a home base to do ministry from to meet the needs in our community. We didn't even have a place to record our online services. In the midst of all the challenges of COVID, God sustained us. And we found ways to continue to move forward and fulfill the mission that God had given to us. You know that we used to come over here to this coffee shop, En Route Coffee, and we used to record our online services there. The owners gave us a key to the shop. And they said, after we close, you come in and you do whatever you need to do, and you record and do all your stuff. And so we would go in there and we would move all the chairs and tables out of the way, and we would set up all of our microphones and equipment and everything, and we would record our online services, and then we would put it all back together. And we just found ways to keep working, to keep moving, right? To keep the ministry going forward. We were partnered with several other churches here in the West Valley. We gathered like a lot of supplies and thank you notes and snacks and drinks that we sent to hospitals to bless the frontline workers who were dealing with COVID. We met a lot of needs in the community that year. Despite the financial challenges that we were experiencing, we were able to bless families and help families who were struggling with needs during COVID. We still had our backpack drive that year, and we helped almost 200 families get back to school that year. And we still had our toy drive at Christmas with the Harvest Compassion Center, and we supported these needy families. And you know that during COVID, despite all the financial challenges, God helped us, and we were able to still continue supporting all of our missionaries. You know, that was a huge blessing. We didn't have to call a single missionary and say, you know what, we don't have the money to keep supporting you. We have to step back from that. We were able to continue to pay our staff. I mean, even though everything was down, God provided in the midst of COVID. A lot of people left the church. Finances were stretched thin. But by the grace of God, we didn't fold. Somehow, God pulled us through. And I'll tell you what, honestly, I have no idea how the math worked. Like, there was times when I'm like, there's not enough coming in and there's too much going out, and I don't know how it worked. I still don't know. All I know is that God showed up and God helped us, and it was by the hand of God that we survived COVID and came through that time. But here was a problem. We were homeless. We had no place to regather as a church, no stability, and online services were getting old. People wanted to be together. We were no longer able to meet at Copper Trail School, so we couldn't have church anymore. We were struggling. How do we figure this out? And people were leaving to go to churches that had buildings. And so we had this whole problem, and we needed to regather desperately. And so we're praying, and God finally opened a door for us at Vistago Epicentro up on Old Litchfield Road and Indian School, and we were able to move in there on Saturday nights. Some of you remember that season. We had Saturday night church for a while. No Sunday, we had Saturday church. And I'm telling you, it was sweet and beautiful, and we were so glad to have a place to meet. But man, it was hard because everybody wanted to be in church on Sunday, and we couldn't get any momentum going, and a lot of people left, and it was really hard. We needed a place to meet. And I'll tell you that I talked to movie theaters, and I talked to schools, every school, the charter schools, the public schools, the Christian schools. Like, I asked the Economic Development Office in the city of Goodyear, do you know of any places that we can meet? We met with Goodyear City Council people. We talked to local developers, realtors. We even went and looked at office buildings. Maybe if all the office people are working from home, we can meet in an office building. We tried every single thing we could find because we needed a place to have Sunday church, and all we found were closed doors. We had this deadline looming. Our contract with Epicentro was up at the end of 2020, and we were just about to be homeless again, nowhere to regather, nowhere to have church. Saturday night wasn't working well. We were struggling. We didn't know what to do, just praying, believing that God had something going on. But I'll never forget this day, December 9th, 2020. I had a meeting with my pastor of Desert Springs, Steve Ingram. And I went and sat in his office, and we're sitting there talking, how do we move this forward? And we're going over all the options, and I'm saying, you know, I tried this, and I knocked on that door, and I walked down this, and I checked on that, and I looked into this, and everywhere I'm getting, there's nowhere to turn. I have no idea what we're supposed to do right now. We have like 3 weeks until the first of the year, and we have nowhere to meet for church. And right there in that moment, it was one of the lowest moments I've ever had as a pastor. I honestly felt in my heart, maybe this is God saying it's time to close up shop. It's time to shut it down, like move on to something else. And I remember in that moment, Steve and I prayed together. And we just said, God, we trust you. We believe that you have a purpose and a plan for your church. And we don't know what it is. We can't see the way forward right now, and we need you to help us. Maybe you've been in a moment like that before. And we had this moment, this moment, and as soon as we finished praying, this is not a joke. I remember this just like yesterday. As soon as we finished praying, Steve said, have you talked to Jeff lately? He was one of the realtors that we were working with. I said, no, I haven't heard from him. He said, I just feel like maybe we should give him a call right now. And so on speakerphone, Pastor Steve calls Jeff up and says, Jeff, we just wanted to check in. We're really struggling here, looking for a solution for Mission Church. Like, have you heard of anything? Jeff says, Pastor, actually, I'm really glad you called. Because just this week, I found a property that just might work for Mission Church, and you guys need to go check it out. And do you know the very next day, December 10th, was the first day that I stood in this building right here. This is what it looked like right here. You got to see this picture. This is the building that you're sitting in right now. And that day it was raining outside. Do you see that giant puddle on the floor? It was like the roof was leaking. It was dusty. The dust was about this thick. Like there's just concrete walls everywhere. But that was the very first time we stood in this very space and we started to pray and have a vision that maybe God had a purpose and a plan right here for Mission Church. Now, we met with the leasing company and they tried hard not to laugh in my face because we were a little church plant and we had no money. And we had no history of renting a building from anyone that would give us credibility with the bank. And you know what we did? We went to Desert Springs and we said, we need some help. And you know what Desert Springs did? They got their elders together and they prayed about it and they came back to me and they said, Pastor Kyle, we believe God has a purpose and a plan for Mission Church. And so we're going to co-sign on the lease for you to get that building. And not only that, but we're going to help you pay the lease payments until your church can afford to do that, because we know you've lost a lot of people, and we know that during COVID it's been really hard financially, and so we're going to help you with that. And number 3, what we're going to do is we're going to loan you the money to help build out this building so it can be a beautiful place of worship so that you can meet in there and gather for worship. And so on January the 1st, 2021, we signed a lease for this building. And God provided a home for Mission Church. It was a massive miracle in our history. There's no way we should have been able to get this building. Well, now we had a lease. But the problem is it was going to take months to build this building out. Right? I mean, we were going to have building plans and architectural drawings and contracts from the city and approvals and all the things. And not only that, we needed money to build out the building and move into this location. And in the meantime, we still didn't have a place to meet for worship on Sunday morning. And our church was slowly dying. For 3 months, I've been praying every day, God, show us a place where we can meet. And finally, just that same week, I mean, this was a week of miracles. I met with the pastor of Vistago Epicentro, and I said, is there any way that you could make space for us on Sunday mornings? And he said, actually, we've been thinking about moving our services back, and would you guys be willing to come in at 9 o'clock and have church, and then after you're done, we'll come in and have our service at noon. And I said, praise Jesus, we need a place to meet on Sundays. And so not only did they open the door for us starting January 1st to meet Sunday mornings in their place, but they also said, you can stay here while you're building out your new building as long as you need to. And so God gave us a place to have Sunday worship. Now, we had a place to meet for Sundays, but COVID had left us cash poor. A lot of people had left. We had no momentum with our ministry, and we were just praying God would help us. And the same day that I stepped foot in this building, I was also introduced to someone for the very first time. A mutual friend of mine introduced me to Pastor Richard Mercado from West Point Baptist Church. It was December 10th of 2020, And they set us up on a blind date right up here on the street. I'm not kidding. Right up here at the Panera Bread. And Pastor Richard and I met there at 1 o'clock. On that day, we met at 1 o'clock. And 4 o'clock, I looked at my watch, and we are still going. I mean, you know he likes to talk. I mean, you know I do too. Praise the Lord. And so it was like two peas in a pod. Like, we just hit it off. And it was like we were just dreaming about ministry. And their church had been struggling and didn't have a place to meet. And our journeys were so, parallel. And we began talking and praying. And we came to this conclusion that we believe that if we came together, two different churches under one name, that we could be better together. That God could bless that and God could do something. And I want to tell you, this is a miracle. You don't recognize it, you don't see it, but this is something I never prayed for. I never went to God and said, God, would you provide another church that would come and merge, and that way we could get more people and more money and more help and all these things? No, God did it without me even asking him to do it. God showed up and provided. And not only that, I want to tell you it's a miracle, because when two churches come together, they have different philosophies. They have different ways of doing things. They have different practices. There's a reason they meet differently, right? And yet God called us to be better together, to join forces together so that we could reach the city of Goodyear and continue our ministries and our mission. And so I want to tell you that God blessed that. And 3 months later, as we prayed and trusted Jesus and got with our elders and all that, in March of 2021, we merged together officially with West Point Baptist Church, two churches becoming one. And that's a miracle right there. And I want to tell you that Pastor Richard came onto our staff team, and he's been such a blessing to our church family. And I want to tell you that all of the families and the people who came over here from West Point Baptist Church, I want to tell you, they are gold. They are the best people, the most amazing people. They have served, they have given, they have led, they have been part. And I cannot imagine our church apart from them. God worked a mighty, amazing work in that. Now, here was the next problem. We had a lease for a building, but we had no money to build it out. During COVID, you might remember, there were supply chain issues. There were shortages of paint, shortages of glass, shortages of steel, shortages of copper. Everything was on shortage. There was no workers to do build-outs. And we were trying to figure this out because we had a deadline. See, we signed a contract starting on January 1st, and we had 6 months to move into the building and start paying rent. And after that, the landlord is ready for us to pay rent. And the challenge is we can't pay rent at Epicentro and pay rent at this building if we're not meeting here. We can't afford to pay two rents and build out the building at the same time. There's no possible way. So how are we going to get into this new building? And we just began to pray. God, you've got to help us. You've got to help us because we don't have enough funds. We don't have enough money in the bank to make this happen. And so we began to pray, and we made a bold ask. We came to our church family. We came to you guys. And these are people who've already been giving sacrificially during COVID. These are people who've already been walking through their own financial challenges. This is a small group of people that we had dwindled down to during COVID, and we said, church family, we are asking you to dig deep, and we're asking you to give sacrificially because we need to raise another $100,000 to be able to do the build out of this building. We had a little bit of cash reserves. We had some money from the merger. We had some reimbursable expenses from the property management company, but we needed some money, and we came to the church family, and do you know that God provided in so many ways? God provided contractors who came to build out the building, workers who showed up on time and did amazing work. God provided blessing on blessing. I can't even tell you, I wish I had time. We had people that came and said, normally I would charge $10,000 for this, but today I'm going to do it for $5,000 because I love what God's building here in your church. And it was just so many stories like that. I wish I had time to tell them all to you. And at the same time, we're asking people to give generously. And do you know that we didn't raise $100,000? We raised $120,000. because of the generosity of God's people, and he worked a miracle. And in November 7th of 2021, we were able to have our first service right here in this space. And do you know that God provided for every single need along the way for us to do that? It was just amazing to see how God provided. And do you know that there was only 1 month where we had to pay rent at the Vistago Epicentro and here? There was only 1 month. God worked everything out by his goodness. God helped us. And we were able to move together as one united church into this building in November of 2021. Now, we had a new building, and that was exciting. But technically, we were starting over. Like, we had lost a lot of people. A lot of our ministries that we had during COVID had stopped or fallen apart or didn't have any momentum, and we needed to get back on mission. We needed to get back to reaching our community. We needed to get back to doing ministry and see people come to faith in Christ. And so we began to pray, God, we don't want to just meet for church. We want to impact our community for Jesus Christ. We need you to do something amazing here as we're replanting and relaunching this ministry. Help us to reach our community for Jesus. And so God has done amazing things since we moved into this place. We've had a lot of growth in our ministry. Just last year, we had a high moment at Easter, over 600 people joining us for worship. This last year, we've had over 100 students and children every week participating in our children's and next generation ministries. We've started new ministries for men's and women's groups. We've started new small groups that people are meeting in homes and worshiping during the week together. We've been reaching out to our community through community outreach events like our annual Easter egg hunt, like our Goodyear Fall Festival outreach. We've gotten involved with the Centera Mirage School that's just a stone's throw away from us here in our neighborhood, supporting them and partnering with them to help needy families. We've started working with the Harvest Compassion Center and continued that work of doing our annual toy drive. Just this year, we added 4 brand new missionary partners who we're supporting financially as they're doing the work of ministry, right? We're so excited about that. One of those is a new missionary family that's going to Japan, the Eisenhowers, and they're actually here today somewhere. I don't know, wave at me. They're in the back there. They actually just got their visas and they're heading to Japan this next month. Praise Jesus. And we're thrilled to be a part of their ministry. We took on new missionaries at NAU University just north of us who shared Jesus with college students. We've been working with the Barbecue Mission, who right here in our own community ministers to homeless people. And we've also started partnering with the Institute of Biblical Leadership, who you'll meet some of their leadership later this month. In addition, we've continued to support missionaries in Nicaragua, Japan, India, South Korea, Italy, Hong Kong, as well as our sister church plant, Passion Church in Palm Springs. Just this last year in our church, amen, praise God, yeah. Just this last year in 2025, 35 people took the first step of getting baptized right here at Mission Church, and that's awesome. And we've seen so many stories of life change and transformation because God has been faithful. And God has shown up over and over and over again. And I wish I had more time because I could tell you so many more miracle stories of the way God has provided financially, the way God has provided spiritually, the way God has given us favor with our community, with business leaders and schools and people, the way God has opened doors for his church and his ministry. And here's the reality. It's so important for us to do this because we are a forgetful people, right? And we don't want to forget all the good things that God has done. We don't want to forget all the ways that he's shown up. We don't want to think for a second that it's about me. It's about us. It's about something we've done. This is all to the glory of God. Everything is for him. And not only that, but as we stand at this moment, 10 years of God's faithfulness at Mission Church, we can have the confidence looking forward to new vision that God has for us. Why? Because for 10 years, God has never failed us, never once. God has always been there faithfully providing for us. Now I'm going to close in just a minute. I want to invite you to stand with me. I'm going to invite our band to come up onto the stage. And I just want to encourage you for just a second, because you might say, you know what, Pastor, this is great, but I just got here. I've only been here. This is my first Sunday. I've only been coming for a couple weeks or a couple months or whatever. And it's great that you have all these stories, but that has nothing to do with me. And I want to tell you something. I want to say, you're absolutely dead wrong. Because if you're in the house right now, this is your story too. You know that every single person who attends at Mission Church, this is part of your story too. In fact, if you're at Mission Church and you've ever served in a ministry, right? You're out there in the parking lot directing traffic. You're in the nursery serving our babies and loving them to Jesus. You're serving with the students. You're doing ministry somewhere in our church. You are a part of this. This is your story. And if you're someone that's prayed for Mission Church or been a part of encouraging someone or inviting someone to come to church, this is part of your story too. And if you've ever given money at Mission Church, this is part of your story, because God, I believe he's multiplied that and he's honored that and he's blessed that and he's continued to build that, because this is not my story. This is our story, all of us, every single one of us. This is your story too. You're part of this. Every single one of us. And so I'm going to ask you today to do something for me. I wanted to have just one take home that I would leave you with, and it's this. I want to beg you, would you pray for Mission Church? Like, would you add it to your calendar to just pray for our church, to just say, you know what, I commit that I'm going to pray for Mission Church. I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm going to put it on my schedule. And I put up 5 ways that you could pray. I mean, these are just 5. I mean, I could come up with a whole list, but 5 ways that you could be part of helping to grow this ministry. Like, God, we're asking you to show up and do something big. We're believing that you've been here for 10 years doing something, and you're not done yet. You're going to continue that ministry. And I want to close with a verse from Ephesians chapter 3. I think this verse is so appropriate for this moment. It says this: "Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever." Church family, God has been good. He's been faithful. But here's what I want to tell you today. He's not done. The best is yet to come. He's going to do it again. Are you with me? Right? God's going to do it again.